All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts. The trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Real men push back. Say no to feminist, Marxist nonsense. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. The trivium of the lion, why just listening is submission. How her embarrassment lies to you, and why the state wants you to pay for another man's bastard. You feel it in your gut. That gnawing suspicion that the world has flipped upside down, where incompetence is celebrated as competence, and the very foundations of your culture are being eroded by a toxic sludge of cultural Marxism. We are living in a hallucination, a carefully constructed simulation where the Frankfurt School's psychosexual strategies have weaponized empathy against you, turning your natural masculine instinct to protect into a death sentence for your own agency. They use the thought-terminating cliché to lobotomize your critical faculties, labeling your desire for objective truth as toxic masculinity, while they strip you of your right to speak, to reason, and to exist without apology. Look around you. The suicide rates for men are skyrocketing. Family courts are shredding fathers like wet paper. And the state acts as the enforcer for a gynocentric pyramid scheme that demands your labor and your silence in exchange for nothing but contempt. But you are not crazy, and you are not alone. You are simply seeing the matrix code for the first time. The woman across the dinner table isn't asking about your financial goals because she gives a damn about your character. She is running a biological algorithm to calculate your extraction value, determining if you are a worthy utility for her hypergamous ascent. When she feigns embarrassment, testing you to see if you will reassure her like a desperate beta or tease her like a man who understands the game. She is engaging in an evolutionary arms race that Schopenhauer warned us about centuries ago. We are told to just listen and be present, but this is a trap designed to strip you of your logos, your problem-solving birthright, while the legal system enforces paternity fraud, turning you into a taxpayer for children that aren't even yours, a state-sanctioned cuckoldry that would make the ancients vomit in their graves. It is time to stop playing by their rules and start playing by the laws of nature and logic. I am going to hand you the weapons of the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, the very tools that built the Acropolis of Western thought, now reforged to dismantle the woke linguistic viruses that infect our institutions. We will reject the feminization of weakness as the presaging of the fall and re-enshrine the transcendentals of the good, the true, and the beautiful. This is a battle for your mind, your lineage, and your soul. Prepare to have the blinders ripped off, because real men push back, and we are about to dismantle the lies of the modern Babylon, one hard, undeniable truth at a time. The bastion of reason dismantling the Frankfurt School's thought police, I once watched a tenured professor of philosophy, a man who should have been a custodian of the canon, publicly apologize to a screaming undergraduate for using the violent language of biological reality during a debate on sex differences. This was not a marketplace of ideas. It was a re-education camp in real time, a case study in the university safe space where the abandonment of logic leads to the total collapse of institutional integrity. The mob did not want an argument. They wanted submission, and they got it. This scene is the direct rotting fruit of the Frankfurt School's long march through the institutions, a strategy designed to replace the logos, the divine spark of masculine reason, with the wet, squishy, and ultimately tyrannical whims of emotional hysterics. When you allow feelings to trump facts in the seat of higher learning, you do not get equality, you get the witch trials of Salem without the integrity of the due process. This institutionalized madness relies on a grotesque trick of biology known as pathological altruism, an evolutionary mismatch where the noble male instinct to protect and provide is hijacked by Marxist ideology to protect the very mechanisms that seek to destroy him. Your biological hardware is wired to sacrifice for the tribe, specifically for the women and children, but the system has hacked this firmware to make you protect the ideology of feminism. You are the guard dog defending the wolf that eats the sheep. This is why men nod along while their own destruction is legislated in family courts, where the statistics on fatherlessness and male suicide rates are ignored in favor of the dopamine hit of being a good male ally. You are protecting the parasite because it has cloaked itself in the camouflage of the victim. You see this biological hack in action in your own living room through the just be present trap. When a woman comes to you with a problem, a flat tire, a rude coworker, a chaotic emotion, and you offer a solution, she snaps that she doesn't want to fix. She just wants you to listen. This is not a request for empathy, it is a submission test. A rigorous logical deconstruction reveals that asking a man, a creature defined by his problem-solving faculty and the agency of his logos, to sit idle and hold space, is a deliberate attempt to strip you of your utility. If you cannot solve, you are useless. If you are useless, you are guilty, and you must apologize for existing. It is a dominance display framed as vulnerability, designed to castrate your masculine drive to build and fix. This domestic interrogation is supported by the Frankfurt School's psychosexual strategy, which utilizes the thought-terminating cliché to bypass your critical faculties. When you point out a logical fallacy, you are met with, "That's just toxic masculinity," or "check your privilege," and boom, your brain is short-circuited. These phrases are designed not to convey information, but to instill guilt, effectively lobotomizing your natural instinct to criticize. It is a psychosurgical strike on the masculine mind, conditioning you to associate the defense of truth with the sin of oppression. They want you to feel a spike of cortisol every time you consider contradicting the narrative, training you like a dog to retreat to the corner of silence. To maintain this cage, they employ the refutation of woke linguistics, a step-by-step guide on how to control reality by controlling the dictionary. If they can change the definition of woman, they can change the definition of rights, violence, and truth. This is the postmodernist deconstruction of meaning, where words are fluid and only the oppressor is fixed. We must reclaim the dictionary from the claws of these cultural Marxists. We must insist that words have objective meanings rooted in grammar. The first leg of the trivium. If you cannot define what a woman is without a committee, you cannot define what a crime is, and the law becomes a weapon against the virtuous. When you fail to submit to their linguistic games, the modern left and the modern woman alike deploy the silent treatment as a weapon. Do not mistake this for a sulk. It is an act of aggression, a calculated withholding of affection and communication designed to make you compliant. It is the same silence of the Twitter ban, the deplatforming, the refusal to debate. It is a denial of your existence because you refuse to accept their reality. The red-pilled man must recognize this silence for what it is, a tantrum of a child who cannot win the argument on the merits of logic. They have no ammo, so they barricade the door and pretend they are the ones who chose solitude. The only rational answer to this chaotic, irrational emotionalism is the stoic response. This is not about being unfeeling. It is about adhering to the cold, unyielding rock of objective reality and the laws of nature. The universe does not care about feelings. It cares about gravity, action, and consequence. While the woke mob screams at the sky about microaggressions, the stoic man plants a field, builds a house, and masters his craft. We must reject the feminization of weakness as a virtue. We must recognize that the strength to endure and the clarity to see the world as it is are the only virtues that prevent the fall of civilization. Finally, we must wield the trivium as a shield. Grammar, logic, and rhetoric are the only inoculation against the linguistic viruses of toxic masculinity and the patriarchy. Grammar defines the terms, stripping the enemy of their ability to lie with ambiguity. Logic identifies the fallacies, the ad hominem attacks, and the appeals to emotion in real time. Rhetoric allows you to strike back, to persuade, and to dominate the discourse. With these three weapons, you can dismantle the lies of the Frankfurt School and reclaim the transcendental living spirit of Western civilization. You are not a beast of burden, you are a bastion of reason. Now act like it. Armed with the trivium to dismantle the Frankfurt School's linguistic viruses and a stoic resolve to weather the silent treatment of the mob, we must turn these sharpened intellectual blades toward the biological theater, where this war is most ruthlessly waged, the modern mating market. The woke pathologies of the university are merely the sterile academic cousins of the ancient evolutionary deceit playing out across every candlelit table in the West. You see, the same manipulation that demands you submit to feelings over logic in the classroom is weaponized by the female nature to test your frame, and failing this interrogation requires a level of ruthless clarity most men have been culturally lobotomized to forget. The simulation of vulnerability, the evolutionary arms race of mating. I watched a man named Brad destroy his romantic prospects in under 3 seconds with a single fatal error of compassion. He sat across from a stunning creature, a woman who had clearly mastered the art of the helpless gaze. And when she feigned embarrassment over a trivial spill, splashing a mere droplet of water on the table. Mind you, Brad rushed in with that soft, simpering reassurance. "Oh no, don't worry about it, it happens to everyone," he cooed, his voice dripping with the sweet poison of blue-pilled servitude. You could see the light leave her eyes instantly, replaced by a cold, shark-like boredom. She wanted a man who would laugh at her, who would hold the frame, who would say, "Wow, you really can't take me anywhere, can you?" But Brad gave her pity, and to a woman's hypergamous nature, pity is the cousin of contempt. She was simulating vulnerability, not because she felt it, but to see if he was strong enough to ignore it. His failure to tease was his failure to lead, and she ghosted him before the appetizer even arrived, leaving him with the check and the lesson that kindness is a vice in the arms race of mating. This is the oldest game in the book, one that Arthur Schopenhauer, the only philosopher to truly understand the female metaphysics of deceit, identified centuries ago when he noted that the woman is the deceiver incarnate. Nature, he argued, has vested the female with the instinct to dissimulate, for she needs the protector and the provider to secure resources for her offspring. Yet she must also secure the strongest genetic material to ensure that offspring survives the brutal game of life. She is programmed to probe for weakness, to simulate distress to see if you are sturdy enough to endure it, or foolish enough to coddle it. In the 1950s, this was a transparent transaction. The provider was honored because the social contract was reciprocal. His labor was exchanged for loyalty, domestic order, and a stable family unit. Today, that contract has been shredded by the Marxist machinery that seeks to invert the natural order. The 1950s provider has been transformed, through the alchemy of cultural Marxism, into the despised ATM of the 2020s. He is expected to provide everything while receiving nothing in return, but disdain and the probability of a family court extraction that would make a bandit warlord blush. When you encounter the pretending to be embarrassed shit test, you are standing at a fork in the evolutionary road. To the left lies the path of the beta, who reassures and signals subservience. To the right lies the alpha, who teases and signals dominance. This is not merely a social nicety, it is a biological filter. The application here is simple. You must weaponize humor and flip the script. If she says, "I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that," you do not comfort her. You look her dead in the eye and say, "Well, I was going to let it slide, but if you're offering, I'll take the discount." You become the prize, you hold the frame. This works because the data doesn't lie. Studies on the dark triad traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, consistently show that women prioritize these exploitative traits during their fertile window. The nice guy finishes last because his agreeableness signals an inability to navigate a ruthlessly competitive hierarchy. She is testing to see if you have the teeth to survive the jungle, and if you apologize for her clumsiness, you admit that you are merely another prey item awaiting consumption. This biological reality leads us directly to the financial interrogation, that dreaded moment when she asks about your financial goals with the predatory focus of a loan officer auditing a bankruptcy filing. This is not a check for compatibility, it is a calculation of your extraction value. Evolutionary psychology dictates that she is not seeking a partner to build with. She is seeking a host organism to parasitize. The entire concept of the equal partner is a statistical lie, a myth perpetuated by the high priests of egalitarianism to mask the reality of the market. If you apply game theory to the modern dating landscape, you see it as not a fair exchange, but a rigged casino. The man brings capital, protection, and status. The modern woman brings what exactly? Complaints, debt, and a history of poor decision-making. We are told this is equality, but it is theft on a cosmic scale. The red pill is simply the painful antidote to this gaslighting, the hard reality that you are not a partner in this charade. You are the resource to be mined. Recognize the simulation for what it is, and you might just survive it. We have demonstrated that the modern mating market is a mechanism of parasitic extraction, demanding your resources for a void of reciprocity. Yet this financial looting is merely the precursor to the ultimate violation, the biological larceny of your very bloodline. The Marxist architects of this decay are not satisfied with merely taxing your labor. They seek to colonize your legacy, weaponizing the male instinct for nurturance to serve the progeny of genetic competitors. We must now turn our logical gaze toward the ultimate deception of the gynocentric order, moving from the theft of your paycheck to the confiscation of your future, where the nothing you receive in exchange for your utility becomes a something that belongs to another man. Fecund lies and state-sanctioned cuckoldry, the paternity fraud conspiracy. Imagine sitting in a doctor's office, holding a newborn infant you have sworn to protect with your life, your resources, and your very soul, only to be handed a piece of paper that tells you the biological code you cherish is not yours. This is not a nightmare, but a statistical reality for millions of men. We live in a civilization that claims to worship the transcendental value of truth, yet when it comes to the foundation of the family unit, we actively conspire to bury the truth under a mountain of sentimental platitudes and legal obfuscation. Paternity fraud is not merely a mistake or a relationship hiccup. It is a violent act of reproductive theft, a biological hijacking that violates the natural law of kin selection. In the brutal calculus of evolutionary biology, a male invests in offspring to propagate his own genetic lineage. When a woman deceives a man into raising another man's progeny, she is effectively parasitizing his life force, rendering his biological imperative moot. This is not a feminine mystery to be celebrated, but a cold, calculated reproductive strategy that serves the hypergamous female while destroying the male's legacy. And we are told by the high priests of cultural Marxism that to even question this is to commit heresy against the sacred institution of motherhood. History is the great witness to the difference between a civilization that honors the line between truth and falsehood and one that disintegrates into chaos. In ancient Rome and Sparta, the legitimacy of a child was a matter of state security and religious solemnity. Adultery and deceit were not private matters, but crimes against the polis itself, because they poisoned the integrity of the citizenry. Contrast that with our modern dystopia, where we have inverted the cosmic order, we punish the truth teller and reward the deceiver. The modern family court, a machine of bureaucratic evil, actively lobbies against mandatory paternity testing at birth, using the Orwellian code phrase "the best interests of the child" to mask their actual intent, which is the stabilization of the welfare coffers and the protection of female deceit. If the system actually cared about the child's best interests, It would prioritize the child's right to know its own biological heritage over the mother's desire to cover up her infidelity. Instead, we have a state-sanctioned apparatus that enforces a lie, turning the family court into a theater of absurdity, where the man who discovers the truth is penalized with emotional distress fines, while the woman who perpetrated the fraud keeps the prize. This brings us to the economic horror of the situation, a reality so vile it turns the stomach of any rational man. The state has effectively turned the modern male into a taxpayer-funded cuckold. By enforcing child support payments on men who are not the biological fathers, the state is subsidizing female hypergamy and paternity fraud. This is indentured servitude. It is a transfer of wealth from the productive, honest male to the deceptive, cheating female, enforced by the barrel of a government gun. The argument that we must maintain stability in the home is a logical fallacy of the highest order. A best interest fallacy that argues a house built on rot is preferable to the demolition required to lay a new foundation. A society built on a lie is inherently unstable. It is a powder keg waiting for a spark. When the state forces a man to invest resources he could use to build his own legitimate dynasty, into a genetic dead end, it is committing violence against the future. And the economic statistics on single-parent households and welfare dependency prove this point with the cold clarity of a spreadsheet. Legally, the entire premise of paternity fraud liability collapses under the weight of basic logic and the trivium itself. If a contract is entered into under false pretenses, it is void ab initio from the beginning. There is no contract of parenthood without informed consent. When a mother knowingly presents a child as a man's biological offspring, withholding the truth of the child's origin, she commits fraud. Every cent that man spends, every hour he labors, is under the guise of a false reality. If I sold you a car, claiming it was new, but it was actually a rusted bucket of bolts with a stolen engine, the contract would be void, and I would be in jail. Yet, in the feminist Marxist matrix we inhabit, the sale of a human life based on a lie is sanctified as parenthood. The legal vacuum regarding consent in family law is a black hole where male rights are shredded by the gravity of feelings over facts. We must confront the monstrous reality of these statistics with the courage of a Roman Stoic and the analytical precision of a Cartesian logician. Peer-reviewed studies, including those published in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health, have indicated that rates of paternal discrepancy range from 1% to 3% in the general population, but spike to nearly 30% in cases where there is suspicion. This is not an anecdotal issue, it is a systemic epidemic. These women are not making mistakes. They are engaging in a primitive biological strategy to secure resources from the best provider while mating with the best genes. A tactic that might have served our ancestors in the savage wild, but has no place in a civilization built on the transcendental values of truth and justice. To excuse this behavior is to excuse evil, and to allow the state to codify it into law is to accept the role of a docile beast of burden. The remedy to this plague of lies is not therapy or negotiation. It is the ruthless, uncompromising application of truth. We must implement universal, mandatory paternity testing at the moment of birth as a prerequisite for birth registration. This is not an invasion of privacy, it is a verification of identity. If the state can demand we register our cars, our dogs, and our guns, it can damn well demand we verify the lineage of a human being before assigning a lifetime of financial liability to a man. This is the only way to re-enshrin the good and the true in the family structure. Until we tear down the curtain of secrecy that protects the lying woman and the complicit state, we remain trapped in a Babylon of woke, where the man who speaks the biological truth is the enemy and the woman who steals a legacy is the victim. It is time to shatter this illusion with the hammer of facts and the fire of logic, for a civilization that cannot tell the truth about its own origins has no future. This theft of lineage is not merely a legal atrocity, it is the primordial sin of our era, the rotten seed from which the poisonous tree of cultural Marxism grows. When the state sanctions the destruction of paternity, it sanctifies chaos over order, elevating the deceptive, materialist whim of the feminine above the immutable structure of the masculine logos. We are facing a metaphysical rot that seeks to dissolve the very concept of fatherhood, and by extension, the authority of truth itself. To fight, this is not just a matter of reclaiming wallets, but of reclaiming the very soul of civilization, for only by re-establishing the dominance of the rational can we hope to survive this descent into madness. The apogee of the androcentric spirit reclaiming the transcendental West. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the obstacle is not the problem, the obstacle is the way, yet I look at modern society and see men treating the obstacle like a brick wall to be cried upon rather than a fortress to be stormed. We stand at the precipice of history, staring into the abyss of a cultural Kali Yuga, an age of disorder where the chaotic, feminine impulse, unrestrained and deified, has usurped the throne of the logos, the rational masculine principle that built the Parthenon and carved the Ten Commandments into stone. This is not a time for polite debate or gentle persuasion, it is a time for the ruthless application of the trivium. Grammar defines reality, logic tests truth, and rhetoric persuades the action, and we must wield these three spiritual weapons to exorcise the demons of cultural Marxism that have possessed the collective consciousness of the West. We have allowed the enemies of civilization to hijack language, to invert the good and the beautiful, and to convince rational men that their own nature is toxic. Consider the sheer statistical weight of the deception we've been fed. We're told that Western society is a patriarchal system designed to oppress women, yet examining the cold, hard data of the legal system reveals the male experience being discarded without ceremony. In most family court cases, statistics consistently showing 80 to 90% fathers are stripped of their right to parent their own children, reduced to mere visitors in their children's lives while the state enforces wealth transfer that would make a feudal lord blush. We're told men are privileged beneficiaries of the system, yet the suicide rate for men in Western society stands as stark evidence of male disposability, with men ending their lives at rates 3 to 5 times higher than women. This isn't the result of toxic masculinity, a vague, empty phrase designed to pathologize male nature. It's the result of a system centered around female priorities that views male usefulness as the only value a man possesses, discarding him when he's no longer useful. The biological reality, which the left tries to bury under a mountain of sociological jargon, is that we are not blank slates. The evolutionary drives that shaped us are not social constructs to be deconstructed. They are the code we must run to maintain a functioning civilization. Feminism, in its Marxist guise, is essentially a shit test on a civilizational scale, attempting to negotiate away the very framework that allows for negotiation. Reason itself? It acts like the invasive cuckoo bird, laying its eggs in the nest of the West, demanding that the host society feed and nurture a parasite that will eventually eject the legitimate offspring of the culture. We see this in the demographic replacement schemes, the vilification of merit, and the promotion of the mediocre over the excellent. The feminine urge in this context is not the noble, nurturing aspect of womanhood, but the chaotic entropic force of nature that must be given form and boundaries by the masculine will to order. Without that masculine containment, civilization dissolves into a soup of feelings and grievances. We must reclaim the concept of the beautiful, for the enemy has made it subjective to destroy the good. They hang a urinal in a museum and call it art, celebrating the ugliness and the profane to mock the divine order. But we know the truth. Beauty is not merely in the eye of the beholder. It is a manifestation of the divine, an objective standard that resonates with the harmony of the cosmos. To accept the feminine decline, to accept the ugliness of modern architecture, the screeching of modern noise, and the inversion of moral hierarchy, is to betray your ancestors who carved cathedrals into the sky, and your descendants who will inherit the rubble if you fail to act. To accept this rot is to spit in the face of the transcendental spirit of the West, which has always sought to reach upward to transcend the beast and become godlike through the exercise of reason and virtue. The Real Men Push Back Manifesto is not a suggestion. It is a moral imperative born of necessity. We must form brotherhoods, coalitions of the rational and the brave, echoing the scholia and the symposia of the past, but hardened for the culture war. We must mentor young men, inoculating them against the estrogenic toxins of the education system before they turn themselves into eunuchs for the approval of a society that hates them. A man who knows the truth, the red pill, but lacks the character, the arit, to act upon it is merely a nihilist, a bitter observer sitting in the stands while his world burns. Virtue is the only remedy. We must cultivate strength, competence, and unyielding resolve. We must be the men who can kill the dragon, build the bridge, and write the epic poem. This is the final synthesis of our struggle. We combine the unyielding biological realities of our nature with the harsh legal truths of our oppression. Forging a worldview where the rational man creates his own reality, we reject the framing of the victim culture. We reject the false prophets of equity. We reject the conspiracy of lies regarding women's true nature. Recognizing that while women are not the enemy, the unchecked feminine imperative, weaponized by the state, is a force of chaos that must be met with the fire of masculine consciousness. We are not here to pick up the pieces of a broken society. We are here to sweep away the debris entirely and rebuild upon the bedrock of blood, soil, and truth. The void is coming, but if we hold fast to the masculine principle, the light of consciousness will not go out. We push back, and in doing so, we save the world. You stand now at the precipice of clarity, looking out over the smoking ruins of the lies that once held your mind in a vice grip of gynocentric servitude. We have ripped the mask off the Frankfurt School's psychosexual strategy, exposing their thought-terminating cliches for what they are, blunt instruments designed to lobotomize the masculine instinct to question. No longer will you sit silently while a woman feigns embarrassment to test your frame, nor will you nod like a compliant gelding when the modern world demands you just be present without solutions. You possess the trivium, the grammar to define their reality, the logic to dismantle it, and the rhetoric to humiliate it in the public square. And that weapon is the only thing standing between order and the chaotic void of cultural Marxism. Let the reality of the situation anchor your bones. The system does not care about truth. It cares about extraction. We have seen the monstrous data on paternity fraud, where the state acts as the pimp in a global ring of reproductive theft, forcing men to finance another man's genetic legacy under the guise of the best interest of the child. This is the evolutionary biology of evil, a parasitic mechanism where your resources are harvested to fuel a machine that hates you. A reality reflected in the skyrocketing suicide rates of men stripped of their dignity by family courts. But you are no longer the beast of burden, you are the architect of your own reality. When she probes your financial ambitions, she is looking for a host, not a hero, and you now have the eyes to see the parasite for what it is, and the wit to laugh in its face. Go forth with this fire in your belly and take the heavy, blunt object of objective reality to smash the idols of the woke temple. You have reclaimed the living spirit of Western civilization, the logos that built the Parthenon and the Constitution, and it is your solemn duty to wield it against the lunacy of the mob. Do not hide this knowledge. Share it with your brothers. Pull the next man out of the ditch of blue-pill delusion and build a coalition of virtuous, rational men who refuse to bow to the lie. The world will try to shame you, to silence you with their silence, but you know the secret. They fear you because you are right. Push back for your sake, for your ancestors, and for the future that belongs only to those brave enough to see it. And now the sponsored book introduction, Real Men, Push Back. Say no to feminist, Marxist nonsense. You're holding this book because something is off. You feel it. You're not weak, but the world keeps telling you to be softer. You're not cruel, but you're labeled aggressive for setting boundaries. You're not failing, you're being set up to fail. I know this because I lived it. I was the kid who got suspended for standing up to a bully. The employee passed over for promotion because I wasn't empathetic enough. The father treated like a financial resource, not a parent. I was told to check my privilege while paying child support on a job I lost because the company hired a less qualified woman to meet diversity quotas. I kept my mouth shut for years. Then I woke up. And when I did, I saw the machine. A system engineered to strip men of power, purpose, and pride, then blame them for the collapse. This book is not for the faint of heart. It's for men who've had enough, Men who've been told their instincts are toxic, their labor expected, their loyalty optional. If you're a man who's been downgraded from protector to paycheck, from leader to liability, this is your counterstrike. Inside, you'll find the truth behind the myths: why men die earlier, work deadlier jobs, and are discarded when injured; how schools pathologize boyhood energy as disorder; how courts treat fathers as disposable sperm donors; how language has been weaponized to paint men as predators by default. You'll learn why emotional labor flows one way, why marriage is a legal trap for men, and why the so-called gender wage gap is a statistical shell game. This isn't theory, this is survival. I've studied evolutionary biology, criminology, family law, labor economics, real data, not propaganda. Men are not the oppressors, we are the exploited class. And we've been silent too long. If you're a woman looking for validation of your victimhood, put this book down, go watch a TED Talk. If you're a man who still believes in fairness, who thinks the system will reward hard work and integrity, you're already behind. Read this book before you sign another marriage license, before you father another child in a feminist legal system, before you sacrifice your health for a job that will replace you the second you falter. This is not self-help, this is self-defense. You'll learn how to push back legally, socially, psychologically. You'll rediscover what it means to lead, to protect, to build. This book is for men who refuse to be erased, for men who remember what strength is, for men who know deep down that they were born to lead, not serve. If that's you, then welcome. The revolution starts now. Real Men Push Back, Say No to Feminist Marxist Nonsense, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.